Hi everyone, I am Jenna Elie. I am a physical therapist with the Northeast Arc Early Intervention Program. So I work with children from birth to 3, so I'm working with the little ones. And unlike everyone else that's up on this panel, I am not a neurologist. I am not specialized in neuro. I treat all different diagnoses. I see ortho, I see kids who are just developmentally delayed. But I also happen to have some experience with the Neuro-Immune disorders, AFM specifically. So I was asked to come speak about rehab and recovery with these neuroimmune disorders. And this is a huge topic to talk about, especially in a half an hour. So I was trying to narrow down kind of what's important, what should we be discussing, what would be actually helpful for patients and families. So we reached out to families and asked what would they like to hear. So that's kind of what this presentation is based off of, and what a lot of the questions we were getting were kind of a PT related, but also from a case management perspective of kind of what can patients do to participate in this rehab or have a role, or so many things can kind of seem out of your control. What can you do to be a part of this team? And so I'm not going to get into specifics about kind of biology of recovery and specific treatments. It's going to be very different for every individual. I will say that there are 2 other presentations that were done through the TMA Association, one by Dr. Daniel Becker and one by Janet Dean, who is here, who both talked about rehab and recovery and have more information about some of the biological recovery aspects. So I encourage you to check those out if you are more interested in hearing some of that stuff as well. So what I'm going to touch on today is different forms of therapy that are out there, how you can modify your environment at home to incorporate therapy into your daily routines, getting continuity of care between your physical therapist, your doctors, all of these people that are on your team. How can you get them to work together a little bit better? How to communicate with your PT, as well as patient and PT advocacy. So at a very basic level, the most common form of therapy, which I'm sure most of you have heard of, are speech therapy, occupational therapy, and physical therapy. So obviously, being a physical therapist, that's what I'm going to focus on today, but I also wanted to include some definitions here of the other disciplines. So a lot of people will be involved with speech therapy to address feeding concerns, swallowing, expressive language concerns, anything that has to do with really language and feeding, you'll find help with the speech therapists. And then kind of differentiating occupational therapy from physical therapy a little bit. Occupational therapy the goal is to help people to participate in their daily routine. So whether this is bathing, dressing, being able to go to work, being able to go to school, the goal is to get these people to be able to participate in their daily routines. So physical therapists and occupational therapists their treatments can sometimes overlap a little bit, but ultimately the goal is somewhat different. For example, if a physical therapist is working on walking, part of working on walking, you may have to work on strengthening your core muscles so that you can be stable and be able to move your body. Whereas occupational therapy might be working on being able to sit on the edge of the bed and dress yourself. So they're both working on the core musculature, but the ultimate goal is different. So that's something to think about as well. We're going to talk a little bit more about frequency of therapy and other forms of therapy, but if you are getting physical therapy and you're hoping to get more of it, especially in the case where I've seen AFM, they're going to be wanting you to do as much therapy as you possibly can. And traditionally, a lot of times people think physical therapy, but if you're not getting enough in one way, you can also seek out doing these other therapies that can work towards similar things. So this is just the overview of physical therapy to restore, maintain, and promote overall physical fitness and health. So this is just a very basic slide that I wanted to put up that are the highlights of recovery and rehab. Obviously, like I said, there's other things that you can look at that have a lot more detail of specifics, but these are kind of the highlights of things that should be priorities. So the number one thing is going to be a stretching routine. So oftentimes you will have increased spasticity or tightness in your muscles, which is going to decrease your range of motion in your joints. And it's going to be so important to get on a regular stretching routine if you already are not on one already, so that you can use your muscles as efficiently as possible. So if my bicep muscle is shortened and I'm trying to reach to get to things, it's going to be obviously a lot harder to do that if I don't have that range of motion. So stretching is going to kind of be that number one thing. And then the other thing that is easier said than done is consistent exercise. Everyone, whether or not you have a neuroimmune disorder or not, exercise, sticking to the routine can be difficult, but it's super important, especially in this population, to stick to a routine and make your body move in some way every single day. So that consistent exercise is going to be essential. And then the use of assistive devices such as wheelchairs, walkers, canes, and orthotics such as braces, as well as using e-stim and functional e-stim to assist with your recovery. So basically, a lot of times people are asking, how does e-stim help? What we've talked about earlier in today's presentations are that disruption, kind of that wire 1, wire 2 that Dr. Greenberg was just talking about. If that is disrupted and your nerves are not able to signal to your muscle, the e-stim can send that signal to the muscle for you so that it can actually contract your muscle. And in that way, it can help to strengthen the muscle and hopefully over time get some of that regeneration, which spontaneous regeneration can happen at any time. So one of the big questions that I received was, how often should I be getting therapy? And this is a really hard question to answer because it's going to be different for everyone. So frequency and duration is going to be dependent on what you're presenting with. Like I said before, kind of that intensive physical therapy is what we're hoping for, but specifically your PT is going to do an evaluation and determine how many times that they think is necessary. But the biggest thing is, no matter how often you're going to therapy, there's going to be more time that you're not in therapy. So the most important thing for you is that you're carrying through and doing things at home that's going to help you throughout your daily life and to reach the goals that you're wanting to get towards. And this can be really overwhelming. It's hard to think about, they're telling me to do all these exercises. How am I going to have time to do this as well as work? As if it's a child, I want them to be able to play and be a kid at the same time. So that's where I'm going to talk a little bit about modifying your environment. So it's going to be important to be able to set aside some time to do those specific exercises that your PT is giving you. But it's also good to think about, what can I do in my daily routine that I can incorporate therapy into where I'm not taking extra time out of my day? So for example, if you have a child who is working on standing, instead of, if they're a child, they're going to be motivated to get to a toy and to play, right? So if all the toys are on the floor, they're going to crawl to it, they're going to sit, and they're going to play on the floor. If you don't have that as an option, if you get a table and put all of the toys up on the table, the child's going to have to stand up to play. So that's just a very basic, simple example of something you could do to modify where that child is going to do whatever it takes to get to that toy to play with it. So you're going to incorporate it into what their daily routine is, which is playing. For someone who is older, if you're thinking about Same goal, standing. You can easily, if you're doing laundry at home, say, you can easily sit down and do it at a table. But if you want to incorporate it into your therapy, try to stand at the kitchen counter while you're folding your laundry. So again, that's not going to take extra time out of your day. Another example I just wanted to talk about is core strengthening. Core strengthening is going to be very important for recovery from neuroimmune disorders. In order to have really good motor control over your arms and your legs, you're going to want to have a strong core that's going to make you more stable so that you can have the ability to control your arms and your legs better. So if you're working on core with children, you may often, if their core is weaker, you may often see that they're crawling over to the wall and leaning against the wall when they're playing, or they are always resting a hand on the floor, or they're playing on their belly, essentially. So instead of just saying, oh, that's just how they play, try to get them to go into the middle of the floor, or you can have them sit on a pillow, which makes the surface a little bit more unsteady so that they're working their core a little bit more. And same thing for someone who's older, you have to consciously think about it a little bit more. But rather than coming home from work or school and sitting on the couch and kind of letting gravity take over and relaxing into the couch to watch your favorite show, kind of think about every time a commercial comes on, I'm going to sit at the edge of the couch and I'm going to hold my body up straight as long as I can. And as you get stronger, you can maybe, instead of doing it during the commercials, you could do it during the show and then take rest during the commercials. So just little pieces that's going to work your body throughout the day. And that makes it a little bit less overwhelming. Some other forms of therapy, there are many different forms of therapy out there. Just a few that I'm going to touch on here: aquatic or pool therapy, hippotherapy, which is horse therapy, music therapy, basically anything that you enjoy doing that's going to challenge your body in some way, you can make it therapeutic. There's a ton of stuff going on right now with adaptive sports, so there are so many more opportunities for people to try different activities that's going to help challenge their body in different ways. Again, thinking about children, that's where I have my background in, so I have a lot of child examples. Playing at the park can be a therapeutic experience. If a child is sitting in a swing, rather than if it's one of those baby type swings, rather than letting them kind of lounge back in the swing, trying to encourage them to sit up, every time that swing moves, they're going to have to use their core to keep themselves upright. You can play a game of stopping and starting the swing, which will challenge them even more. So there's lots of different things that you can make into therapy throughout your day. And then another question that was asked is, why is it important to do these different therapies? And unfortunately, insurance only covers so much PT. Initially, you may be able to get PT at an inpatient basis, which you could get a lot more frequently than if it's later down the line. Sometimes you get it once or twice a week. So it's important to do other things to supplement it, and it also keeps it fun. So it's not just strictly exercise, you're doing something that you enjoy. And it works your body in different ways than if you're doing strictly exercise. Some of the benefits of aquatic therapy, one of it can help with decreased spasticity. Usually the pools are heated, so the heat can help with the stretching. If you're kind of in a rut and you're not able to get past a certain range of motion with your stretching, trying out pool therapy may be the thing that you need to kind of boost it a little bit. Hippotherapy or horse therapy, all these examples I was talking about with sitting before, that helps to challenge your core. When you're sitting on a horse and the horse is moving, your body has to react every time that horse moves. So you're challenging your core in a different way than you would be able to at home. It also mimics the movement of walking. So your body is feeling that pattern of walking to hopefully help to kick in your body's central pattern generators and get that pattern back. Music therapy can help to increase breath support. It can encourage language, and it also can just be a great motivator for people who are kind of in a rut and really enjoy music. It can help them to get involved a little bit more. And then the last thing on here, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about in the next slide, is that it can avoid or help with plateaus. So if you feel like you're kind of reaching a plateau where you haven't seen a lot of progress in a little while, kind of changing it up a little bit and trying a different activity or trying a different approach could avoid or help with these different plateaus. Another question I was asked is, what if I don't see any results from therapy? Elisa touched on this a little bit earlier, that it's important to distinguish if there actually is no progress or if you're just not able to see it. So if you're living it every day, you may not see that progress, whereas if your therapist is checking in with you weekly, they may be noticing a big change from the previous week. So just always keep that open communication and ask them to show you the progress, ask them to tell you what they're seeing. It can definitely be hard to see it when you're living it every day. And the other thing to know is that plateaus can and do happen, but it's important not to give up at these times. And I know it can be frustrating, but it does not mean that you're at your maximum potential. Like I said before, you can get spontaneous recovery at any time. So it's going to be important to just keep working hard. All of you are such hard workers, and maybe try something different, try a different approach, but keep up all of the hard work you've been doing. One thing that has been reiterated throughout this symposium today is the importance of teamwork and communication. So if you are somewhat newly diagnosed and you have all of these different medical professionals coming on your team, you can have your primary care, neurologist, orthopedist, orthotist, physical therapist, occupational therapist, speech therapist. There's a number of therapists and doctors who are all of a sudden on your team with you, and this is not an exaggeration. Many people have all of these people on their team. It can be really, really overwhelming. And that's why working together is going to be a critical piece of all of this. So how can I get continuity of care between my PT and my doctors? Communication is going to be key. Each person brings a new idea to the team, and if they work together, they can get the best results possible. As a patient or caregiver, you want to make sure that you're advocating for that communication between your team, especially if it's not being done already. So I just wanted to put together a long list of ways that you can help to foster this communication with your PT and your doctors. Your PT is most likely going, or your therapist is oftentimes the person that you see the most because you're working with them on a daily or weekly basis. And then you're going to have these specialty appointments. And these specialty appointments with your neurologist, orthotist, orthopedist, whoever it is going to kind of drive that plan of care. So when you have these appointments coming up, you can sit down and talk to your therapist beforehand. Formulate a list of specific questions. So write down questions you have, but also have the PT write down questions. These are rare neuro-immune disorders. They're not things that every PT is going to see every day, so I'm sure that there will be questions that they have and they could benefit from getting answers to. So if you sit down and have a list of questions, you can take it to the appointment, you can get your questions answered, and so can the therapist. You can also have the therapist write a short update on your progress, on goals, on kind of next steps of things you're working towards, and bring that to your appointment. I'm fortunate in working in early intervention. I am able to attend patients' appointments. That's not always the case, but if it is the case, you can always ask if it's possible for your PT to attend your appointments. If it's not possible, you could potentially have them call into the appointment or FaceTime into the appointment. I've done that with Dr. Greenberg before and learned so much from those appointments. So it's helpful for the medical professionals as well as for you. If the PT can't be available during the time of the appointment, have them call after, talk to the doctors after about what they are seeing and what they're recommending. Another strategy I've used with people is keeping a communication book. You can have just a little notebook to bring to your appointments and have people say, write the top 3 the biggest priorities that you would want me to kind of look towards in the next 6 months or so. And that way it's organized for you. You have all of your information in one place, and you can also share it with other team members and kind of see if everybody's on the same page. And a lot of times now with technology, people give out their emails. So if that's the case, you could keep a running email chain where you update everyone on the team after your appointments of what's going on. And sometimes it can even be helpful if you have a friend or family member who's willing to come with you to the appointments to just take notes and write down things that are happening. And then communicating with your PT, not so much the PT and the team, but just communication with your PT is going to be so important. You always want to be open and honest with your PT. As a PT, we want to hear feedback from you. We want to answer your questions. If you don't understand something, ask. If you're having a hard time with something and you go to your next appointment, if you're going to outpatient and they say, so how is it going? How are your exercises? And you say, oh, they were fine. That's not going to help the PT to help you. So you really want to tell them, I was really having a hard time with this one thing. I'm not sure if I'm doing it right. I don't know if this is working, and they may need to change it. But always making sure you're just kind of being open and honest. And like many people have said before, the patient is the number one person on the team, and what your goals are should be known. You're gonna kind of drive that plan of care as far as what you're aspiring to get towards. If it's hard for you to bring up what you would like to see, if you're kind of at a point where you're not really sure where rehab is going and you want to talk to your PT about what your goals are, but you're not really sure how to bring it up, you can always ask for a formal reassessment if you haven't had one in a while. Hey, I just would like to see what you're seeing for progress. Can we do a reassessment to kind of look back at that? And that can kind of be a bridge for that conversation. Another question that was posed is, what if my goals are not aligned with my PT's goals? And the first thing I would say is just to make sure you ask the PT what their goal, what the reasoning behind their goal is. So they may have a goal for you to increase the dorsiflexion of your ankle by 10 degrees, and you're saying, I don't care about that, I just want to walk. Their goal may be a step towards the goal that you're trying to get to. So just make sure you're asking what their goal means and you're fully understanding it. Tell them what's important to you again, and communicate with other team members to kind of make sure everyone's goals are aligning. And if you really feel like you're not agreeing on the goals with your PT, it's okay to seek out a different person. I know that people often don't want to hurt people's feelings and feel bad about leaving, but if you don't have a good working relationship, which Dr. Greenberg had said before, you have to have a good relationship with your providers. It's okay to seek out someone else, and the therapist is going to be okay if you do that. And then how can PTs advocate for patients? Just by communicating to team members. Communication is going to be a running theme here. Speaking up with ideas. If if an orthotist is suggesting something and the PT is not quite sure that that's going to work for this person because they see them regularly and kind of see that that's not going to be right, just speaking up and having a discussion. And those discussions are going to be important for everyone to understand the reasoning behind the treatments. Again, calling the specialist if they have questions. Because these are rare disorders, the physical therapists, no one really has every single answer, but the PTs won't have all the answers, so it's okay for them to not know everything, but they should be making sure that they're seeking out as many answers as they can by talking to the specialists. And then the last thing I have here is by teaching the patient and family how to be advocates for themselves, and that's going to be huge because you're not always necessarily going to have that PT to advocate for you, and you want to know how to do that appropriately yourself. If you have a hard time speaking up, you can try to find a team member who you can voice your concerns to and who can then communicate it to the team. As a PT, we do this often. And you just want to make sure that you're in control of your care. And if you have that team member that you talk to who kind of speaks for you to the team, working with them to say, hey, at this next appointment, can you talk about this and I'll talk about this, and slowly kind of let the reins go back to you so that you're able to advocate for yourself. And learning to advocate for yourself, you're going to learn how to best take care of yourself and kind of know what you need in your rehab. So this is just the take-home messages here. These diagnoses don't go away overnight. It's a lifelong process. As far as what you're doing for rehab, you should be kind of prioritizing stretching, regularly exercising, and incorporating that e-stim or functional e-stim to hopefully assist with that regeneration. Modifying your environment to make therapy part of your everyday routine so that it doesn't become too overwhelming. Finding an activity that you love to do and sticking to it. And then what I don't have on here is just the communication and the teamwork is kind of that number one priority, and I think everyone here can agree on that. So that's all I have. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the TMA for having us all.